Hey everyone, Ed40 here with another Hardcore Nuzlocke, this time in Pokémon White. This is another banning half the Pokédex run. That means I'm only using half of the Pokémon introduced in Gen 5, minus starters, legendaries, and pseudo-legendaries. And because I'm going to be playing the sequel game, every Pokémon I'm not using here is going to be used over there. This means that I have a total of 34 Pokémon I can use, though this is not a run where I can catch them all. Here are the rules in short. You can only catch the first viable encounter on each route. There are no duplicate encounters. If a Pokemon faints, they're dead. There are no items in battle outside of held items. Battle modes on set, and there are level caps equal to each gym leader or champion's ace. Now let's get after it. I decide to give myself an Oshawott here. Even though Snivy is my favorite starter of all time, this lets me get a guaranteed Pansear down the road, so I think it's the right call. And thanks to Oshawott's sheer strength, both my rival starters go down in a jiffy. Pokémon White was the first game I ever bought with my own money. It was the first entirely new game that came out after I got back into the series at the end of middle school, and I was over the moon to play it. Honestly, even though it really wasn't well received at the time, I loved it. It was well-paced, challenging, and one of the few games in the series to do the Evil Team storyline well, and arguably the best at it, depending on your feelings about Team Skull. That said, there are some flaws. A lot of the Pokemon they introduced were poorly designed, weak, or both. The Pokemon people like from this gen, everybody likes, but there are a bunch that don't really land. It and Gen 8 are probably the worst design generations in my book. In addition, and this is a very unpopular opinion from what I can gather in the franchise, it's my least favorite game graphically. Now, it performs well. We're not talking like a Scarlet Violet or something like that. A lot of the art in-game just feels kind of pixelated to me at times though, which really cuts into how otherwise cool it is. It's another game that's really well paced though, and for years, it was probably my second favorite mainline of the series. And for the amount I've played the original Gen 5 games on this channel, that hasn't changed very much. As I face N, I want to just quickly talk about Team Plasma. I think they're so cool, like I said earlier. I'm of the opinion that the best evil teams are the ones that they play for goofs, especially Team Skull. But if you're gonna have a seriously evil team in the game, there's not a single one that's better. The game has a cool moral dilemma about the ethics of using Pokemon to fight, and I always appreciated that. But I think the way it resolves itself is a little unsatisfying, with Ghetsis turning out to just be generically evil, instead of giving us a more developed conflict. But it's nonetheless a cool setup at least. And with that, I can finally catch my first Pokemon. On Route 2, I catch a Purloin I named Foxy Brown. Her minus defense gentle nature is a little worrying for what's to come, but I have hope she'll prevail. And her first test is right now against Bianca. I don't want to overlevel Foxy, so I've settled for level 10. I scratch Lillipup, doing over half thanks to a crit. Well, that's a great start, especially when Lillipup just uses Odor Sleuth. Another Scratch drops Lillipup, sending in Tepig. Scratch does about a quarter as Tepig lowers Foxy's defense. Another Scratch brings him to half, as Tackle does a little under a third. This is a little trickier than I'd like, because Bianca's gonna potion if I can't kill. But my next Scratch crits for the win. And that lets me take the apparently luckiest Purloin I've ever met to Striaton City. After a couple of levels, I'll get to battle Chiron for the first of many times. They really pack this game with rival fights. With Foxy at level 12, she has access to Fury Swipes. This move is nothing if not a gamble, with low accuracy but huge reward if it hits more than twice. I use it against Snivy, and it connects 3 times, to do a little over half as he leers. My next Fury Swipes activates his Oranberry to basically keep him at the exact same spot, as he leers again. Fury Swipes 3 hits again, to bring Snivy to the red, as he tackles to only do 8 damage. Not as bad as I thought it could be, and Scratch KOs cleanly. Now it's a Purloin on Purloin battle, but mine misses Fury Swipes as his scratches to bring Foxy to half. But I don't give up hope, and another 3 hits sends him to half. Scratch high rolls though, and sends Foxy to just 8 HP. I need some luck here. And Foxy 3 hits Chiron's Purloin into the ground for the win. If cats have 9 lives, Foxy might have just used one of them right here. That was so clutch. Now, remember what I said about the guaranteed Pansear? So, in the Dream Yard, there's a person who gives you an elemental monkey of the type your starter is strong against. It's kinda a charming way to teach kids about type matchups if you ask me, but we're not getting Pansear here. There's another Pokemon on my list who I want to catch who only shows up here. So I'm foregoing Pansear for now, even though they'd be extremely helpful in this upcoming gym battle, and just going with Foxy. I have no idea if this can be done. Of the 3 Pokemon you can catch before the first gym, Purloin is the most different. First, as the only Dark type, it's the only one to not get stab attacks through the level cap. This means that Purloin's dealing less damage in general. She's also relatively weak and frail. But as for her strengths, she's extremely fast, and the first gym leader's Lillipup only has Bite as an attacking move, meaning she can take it with minimal damage. Finally, at level 15, she gets Pursuit, which is one of the reasons this fight could potentially work. With a guaranteed 60 base power hit each turn, we might be able to work something out. If we don't, I'm getting Pansear next attempt, but here's hoping. And even before that, Foxy instantly strikes gold with not only a 5-hit Fury Swipes on Silent's Lillipup, but she gets a crit on one of the hits too, sending him to the low yellow. He goes for a workup. Silent has to heal now as I scratch. I didn't fully realize he had potions, but I wanted a guaranteed hit either way. I go back to Fury Swipes, which 4 hits this time to bring Lillipup to the red as he just uses workup again. But it's repeat time right now, and Scratch does the job, KOing Lillipup and leveling Foxy up. Hello, Pursuit! It's time to debut this thing, and it does about a third as Pansage works up. One more connects, but it looks like it'll be another 2 hits. So I think I'll have to go for Fury Swipes as Vine Whip does over a third, but it misses. This means that Pansage uses Vine Whip again to activate Foxy's Oranberry and Unburden. I try for Fury Swipes again, but it's just 2 hits. No dice. Thanks to the Oranberry though, Foxy survives a high roll Vine Whip on 8 HP. I'm just thankful that didn't crit. But with that, I outspeed and Pursuit for a guaranteed KO and my first gym badge. I'm glad my fears ended up being in vain, and Silent's my least favorite of Ash's partners, so I'm glad to see him whooped here. And speaking of whooping, after Team Plasma finishes whooping a Munna, it's time to get one of my own. I catch one I name LL Cool J and head on over to Route 3, where I face Chirin again. LL doesn't play a big role in this fight, but he immediately makes things easier by giving me a switch when Snivy gets 3 Leers off on Foxy. But by pivoting back when Chirin's Purloin comes in, Foxy can use her incredible luck to just one-shot Purloin with Fury Swipes. And after a Plasma robbery, I can catch a Pidove I named Lil Kim. Now, the Pidove line is easily the worst of the early bird Pokemon lines, with bad optimization all around and a hideous design. But at least I have a new teammate, and after she beats down Team Plasma with Chirin, I can get another. Now, this is tricky because I have 2 choices here between Roggenrola and Woobat. Both have an even appearance rate, but Roggenrola makes future encounters easier for me, and is better into the next gym, so that's who I'm rooting for. And I'm in luck, because that's who I get. I name him Big Pun. I also pick up a Throh outside Pinwheel Forest I name Fat Joe. After a pretty easy fight with N, Foxy evolves into a Liepard, just in time for a fight with Lenora. Now, Lenora is in contention for the hardest gym leader in Pokemon, with access to Intimidate and the only second gym leader in the series with all her Pokemon evolved. That said, I have a couple weapons at my disposal to help. First is LL Cool J, who takes a takedown under half health, but his Oranberry gets him the recovery he needs before he yawns. Next, I switch into Big Pun on another takedown. Not what I was expecting, but Herdier falls asleep as I use Rock Smash, taking Herdier to a bit under half and getting the defense drop. Now I can connect with another, but before I KO, Herdier wakes up and lands another takedown. That means I can KO, but Big Pun may not have enough health for Watchog. As a result, I've gotta switch into Fat Joe like it's twins. He comes in on a crunch, getting the defense drop. Ugh. But I'm not really sure about switching back into Big Pun, so I stay in. Watchog hits Retaliate, doing a hefty chunk of damage. But Rock Smash lands, doing over half! As nice as that should be though, when I go for it again, Watchog lands Hypnosis! I should probably switch, but nothing's feeling like a great option, so I stay in. Retaliate brings Fat Joe to a quarter, but his Oranberry brings him a little under half. But that doesn't matter, because I get a 1-turn sleep of my own, and Fat Joe wakes up and rock smashes Watchog for the win! Now that Team Plasma stole a Dragonite Skull, I can head to Inside Pinwheel Forest for a new encounter. Now, it's probably a little unfair to be getting one after I just got Throh in the exterior, and that's something that I'm gonna have to think about going forward. But this feels very much like it should be a new route to me. Anyways, I pick up a Petalil I named Cardi B here. Petalil is really high up there alongside Clawitzer and Skuntank for Pokemon I love but can never use in a run, because they're always version exclusives, so I am so happy to get one. This also means I now have a full team, and right afterwards, Lil Kim evolves into a Tranquil. I decide to lead Big Pun against Berg because he just has a Whirlipede. Whirlipede screeches, but this doesn't affect Big Pun partially because he doesn't have ears, partially because Rock Blast straight up KOs. This brings Leavanny in, and I'm not keeping Big Pun in for that. Instead, I swap to Lil Kim on a Razor Leaf. Now, Air Cutter doesn't do enough damage to KO after Leavanny outspeeds, because this evolution line is awful. But after another Razor Leaf sends Lil Kim to half, Air Cutter can connect to KO. Now, it's just Dwebble, and with a switch back to Big Pun, Smackdown barely does any damage, and I can Rock Blast him away for the win. Now, after a couple relatively underwhelming rival battles, I've got some Pokemon to catch. On Route 4, I can either catch a Darumaka or a Scraggy. I'm hoping for a Darumaka here, because that allows for a ton of interesting team options, and even though they're more common, I end up finding a Scraggy I named DMX. As a result, Darumaka is by far the most common available Pokemon I can catch in Desert Resort, meaning that I run into one and catch him. But when I swap into LL Cool J to yawn him, he uses Fire Fang! Thinking I could take another, I yawn, but it high rolls, meaning LL Cool J is lost to Sandstorm Chip. That's brutal. With this single encounter, I've lost 2 of the Psychic types I can get, because I can't catch a Sigilyph anywhere else either. But that said, after bringing Ja Rule the Darumaka onto my team, as soon as I step onto the grass on Route 16, I catch a Solosis named MC Light. So now I guess I've got a Psychic type after all. I also pick up a Swadloon in the Lostlorn Forest I named Remima. This also means I officially can't catch Simisear anymore, but I think the Leavanny line is a better choice anyways. I decide to bring in MC Light for Lil Kim, who I don't think can help me much going forward. Shortly after that, Big Pun evolves into a Boldore, giving me a strong, tanky Pokemon to take on Elisa with. Now, I know that I've said this in like every playthrough of Black and White, but I truly hate Bianca's arc. I think Chiron has an interesting journey of learning what it means to be strong. But Bianca, on the other hand, doesn't really know what she wants, can't really be great at anything, and has this big moment standing up to her toxic dad that gets undercut before she begins to disappear from the game going forward. I think she could be such an interesting character, and I just wish she was better utilized. Another thing to talk about in Nimbasa is this battle with N. In recent times, I've realized this battle is actually pretty tough. Because basically all the Route 4 and Desert Resort Pokemon are excellent except for Maractus. He's got a powerful team with a ton of coverage. I lead with Foxy, who hits a Fake Out followed by a return to KO Sandile, bringing in Scraggy. And here, I switch to Fat Joe on a weak Brick Break. Unfortunately, Scraggy outspeeds and uses Swagger, so this could get really bad if Fat Joe doesn't break through. But he does, so Storm Throw does the job. This brings in Sigilyph, which is exactly what I was hoping for when I planned this fight out. Here, I can just switch back into Foxy on an immune Psybeam, and then hit a Fake Out for some free chip. Pursuit doesn't KO, so Foxy takes Air Cutter for more than I'd like, but she was safe to a crit even, so one more Pursuit KOs and leaves just Darumaka left. I decide here to just swap into Big Pun, coming in on a Fire Punch, but I'm devastated to say that the next Fire Punch burns Big Pun! But 2 hits of Rock Blast even with a burn do half, and burn damage leaves Big Pun still over half, so after a weak Facade, one more Rock Blast connects for the win. While I'm training up to take on Elisa, I get bored and realize I can go onto Route 5. Here, I catch a Cinccino I name Azalea Banks. This probably makes things easier for me for guaranteeing future encounters, but I kinda wanted a Trubbish here. The first time I played Pokemon White, I caught one, and she was really the heart of that run. But after taking the Euthanasia roller coaster, it's time to finally fight Elisa. Lenora and Clay pretty easily take the two hardest gym leader spots in this game, but she has a good argument for third with the Volt Switches and the potential for paralysis and general brutalization. Let's see if we can shock our way to a win though. I lead with Big Pun. Emolga Volt Switches into the other Emolga, doing a third even with Eviolite. And then Rock Blast doesn't even KO. But at least this means Elisa has to Hyper Potion. So with another Rock Blast, one of the hits of which crits, Emolga number 2 is down and she goes back to Emolga number 1. This one Volt Switches again, so Zebstrika takes half damage from a Rock Blast instead of it getting rid of Emolga. Big Pun absolutely cannot stay in now. So I swap to Fat Joe on a Volt Switch. And I think Emolga's gonna go for Aerial Ace, but I want to see how much a return does. Well, at least it's a 2-hit. And no Aerial Ace crit means that Fat Joe survives Emolga in the red, sending Zebstrika back in. And I get an idea here to go into Cardi. But Spark does about a third of her health. I need to just hope he doesn't crit. And Sleep Powder lands! I was going to switch here, but actually Giga Drain might be able to take care of Zebstrika outright. Except it doesn't. My mistake. At least I can use this heal to set up Leech Seed. Zebstrika wakes up next turn, but Giga Drain brings him under half. Then I put him back to sleep, letting a weak Quick Attack get some minor chip in, and one more Giga Drain gets me the 4th badge. There was some sloppy play here, but overall, I was in a good position. I just need to remember to be careful with Sleep Powder's low accuracy, and I should be fine. The only thing I'm surprised about is Zebstrika never using Flame Charge. I wonder what's up with that. Anyways, at this point, I'm not really convinced Foxy is going to be as useful as some of the other Pokemon I have going forward, so I decide to retire her for now, bringing in DMX the Scraggy instead. And after a chill battle with Chiron plus an entirely random double battle with some preschoolers, I evolve Cardi B into a Lilligant and get early access to Quiver Dance. Lilligant is incredible, and I'm so excited to use her. In fact, the first time I do, it's to catch my next encounter. On the Driftvale Drawbridge, I can run into one of the little shadows and find and catch a ducklet I named Nicki Minaj. Swanna is such a useful Pokemon in this game, so I'd rather just put her on the team in the place of Fat Joe, who's strong and bulky, but a little bit redundant at the moment. I cross into Driftvale and Clay yells at me for not doing his job for him, and makes me do, well, that. It's so bizarre. I thought child labor was illegal in New York. But heading into cold storage, I guarantee myself a Vanillite, who I catch and name Rayquan. Rayquan's going on the team in the place of MC Light for now at least. I love this stupid little ice cream cone, and Solosis in my opinion is a little too weak without evolving first. And with a bit of training, it's time for Clay. I've said this before, and if you watched my electric run, you get it. But Clay is tough. His Excadrill can just devastate your team if you don't have the right setup. But I've got a key to victory. I lead Cardi and instantly Sleep Powder Croc. Now that he's under, I set up 2 Quiver Dances. I really don't want to risk a Swagger, so I just Giga Drain instantly to KO. This brings out Excadrill. I'm not sure if Giga Drain will KO even with these boosts, so I put him to sleep just in case. And I'm glad I do, because he survives on a Sliver. Well, if Clay's gonna heal, might as well get to +3 special attack. And with that, Giga Drain's a guaranteed KO, and Palpitoad falls right after for the win. It's wild seeing Clay ever be this easy, but I'll take it. After an underwhelming battle against Bianca, I catch a Fungus I name ASAP Rocky. Right after that, in Chargestone Cave, I find a Joltik I name Spinderella. That means I'm officially locked out of catching a Tynamo, though of all the available Pokemon, this was always the least likely option. Besides, pretty much every Pokemon in Chargestone Cave is a great find. I decide to swap Spinderella onto the team for Rayquan. But just after I do that, I get into a little trouble. See, I encounter this trainer in Chargestone Cave who leads with a Drillbur. I have Jaw Rule out, and should be able to KO, but Drillbur outspeeds and goes for Dig. To block Dig's effectiveness, I swap into Nicki Minaj. The bright side of this is that she can land Scald for some massive damage, but Scald doesn't KO as Drillbur sets up Home Claws. And then, Drillbur outspeeds to KO with Rock Slide! I didn't even realize they had access to that move, and that's devastating. While I got out okay in the end, I lost one of my favorite Pokemon I had access to. And it hurts as someone who was a barb in high school, but here we are. I bring MC Light back onto the team in her place. And after DMX sweeps N, I've officially guaranteed an Audino on Route 7, so I catch her and name her Salt. We're really starting to fill out the PC now, especially after I catch a guaranteed LGM in the Celestial Tower I name Yassine Bay. As I make my way through the tower though, MC Light evolves into a Duosion, and Ja Rule evolves into a Darmanitan for a massive power boost. Once I leave the tower, which always felt like a little bit of a waste of time, I can take on the gym. The Mistralton gym in both Black and White and its sequels is just a crime. There is no reason children should be getting shot into steel walls. I love it. But Skyla is usually an underwhelming gym leader despite how harrowing the gym itself is. Although that's not strictly as true in this Nuzlocke. Nonetheless, I lead with Big Pun as Swoobat sets up Calm Mind. Then, a Rock Slide KOs her cleanly to bring in Swanna. As I look at what could have been, I swap into Cardi as she sets up Aqua Ring. Then, I put Swanna to sleep, bringing in Spinderella. But Spinderella doesn't outspeed, so Swanna wakes up and does over half with Air Slash. And gets the flinch! Absolutely devastating. I need to switch, and I don't want to bring Cardi back out on an Air Slash, so I go into MC Light. Though Air Slash does a little less than half to her, but I need to risk a crit here, so I go for Thunder Wave. And Air Slash flinches! I'm in trouble. I'm gonna have to use Big Pun here. I swap into him on another Air Slash and just pray that Eviolite lets him survive a Bubble Beam. And he lives on 10 HP, allowing a Rock Slide to KO. A miss there and I'd have been screwed, but that leaves me with very few options to take on Unfezant. Expecting a quick attack, I swap back into Cardi, but Unfezant goes for Air Slash. Cardi survives with a third health left, thankfully, but that was brutal. Now I need Sleep Powder to connect. And it does! But as I swap into Ja Rule, my last line of defense, Unfezant wakes up and quick attacks. This could get rough. Fire Punch doesn't KO. We just need to not flinch. And Ja Rule survives in the yellow to pull off a Fire Punch for the win! A much rougher badge than I thought it'd be, but at least we survived. Though the Basculin I try to catch on Route 1 definitely doesn't. Whoops! Oh well, at least I catch a Frillish named Young MA on Route 17, and a Dwebble named Peppa on Route 18. Both of them are coming on the team in the place of MC Light and Big Pun, though their natures definitely could be better. Following that, Peppa and Spinderella evolve. Then, in Mistralton Cave, I catch a Woobat I name Antoinette. Finally, in Twist Mountain, I catch a Cryogonal, one of my favorite Pokemon this generation, who I appropriately name Ice Spice. I've always found the Icera City area to be a little annoying. There's a lot of good stuff you can get there, but this part of the game, and really only this part of the game, is just so season dependent. While I think seasons are awesome as an idea in Pokemon, rotating by month is maybe the most annoying way they could have handled them. As a result, I can't pick up the substitute TM in Twist Mountain like I did in my Regilock, but I get something that short term at least is even better. Right before challenging the Icera City Gym, DMX evolves. And I'm gonna use him to cleanly sweep Bryson. While Vanilluxe uses Acid Armor, an Expert Belt boosted Brick Break crits to KO. Beartic comes in next, but a high jump kick gets rid of him. Last up is Cryogonal, who lands an Aurora Beam, but no attack drop means another Brick Break KOs cleanly. But now, I have to go to Dragon Spiral Towers and Awakens Reshiram, and I have a choice to make. Do I catch Druddigon or Golett? Golett perfectly answers my typing needs, but has a 50% chance of having Klutz, one of the worst abilities in all of Pokemon. While Druddigon gives me a ton of power and is my one Dragon-type encounter of the run, but isn't as helpful in terms of typing. But I really want both, so even though I could guarantee either, I let random chance take the wheel and run around the first floor of the tower, only to encounter a Golett I catch, naming them Biggie. I go to the PC to check their ability, and it's Iron Fist! I pretty instantly swap Peppa out for them as a result. I really want to prioritize new Pokemon for the channel in this series. I want to swap out Spinderella too for Ice Spice or Rayquan, but I've honestly gotten too attached to her to switch her out. And after young May evolves into a Jellicent and takes down Bianca in my final battle with her, I can guarantee myself a Pawniard by bringing Peppa back in and rappelling through the dark grass to find and catch one I name Roxanne Shantae. This means I officially can't catch Garbodor, which is sad. But I always thought the Bisharp line was so cool. Unfortunately, barring catastrophe, she won't make it onto the team, but I'm still glad to have her. And shortly thereafter, Biggie evolves into a Golurk for a now fully evolved team. In Opelucid City, Iris and Drayden lecture me about the ancient dragons, but I'm more interested in who these random people living in their house are. What's up with that? Anyways, it's time to take on Iris, who I always preferred as the gym leader here in the originals. A good chunk of my team is underleveled by accident, so this might get dicey. I lead with Cardi B. With the Dragon Dancing Fracture and Haxorus, I want a setup of my own. So I put Fracture to sleep and just set up Leech Seed. Then setting up a Quiver Dance before putting her back to sleep as she just goes for a Dragon Dance. One more Quiver Dance and I go for Giga Drain, which KOs! Next up is Druddigon, who I also put to sleep and then Leech Seed. But after another Quiver Dance and a Giga Drain that sends Druddigon to the red, Druddigon wakes up and slams Cardi with the Dragon Tail. Not really what I wanted here, to say the least. Spinderella comes in, but now I'm just gonna switch back to Cardi. I bring her back in, putting Druddigon back to sleep and begin re-establishing Quiver Dances. But again, just after I get to 3, Druddigon wakes back up and Dragon Tails Cardi out again. Well, I guess young MA will do here. After she gets hit with a Night Slash to just over half, Shadow Ball sends Druddigon back to the red, letting Leech Seed KO her in the end. But this just leaves Haxorus, and any Dragon Dancer is terrifying, especially maybe the greatest of them all. I swap out to Cardi on an Assurance, and put Haxorus to sleep, and set up Leech Seed, but she's probably not seeing much more action right now that she's under half health. I go into Ja Rule, using Thrash, which doesn't do enough as Haxorus wakes up and uses Dragon Dance, and because Thrash wastes Haxorus' healing turn, I should probably switch. There's really only one good option here. I go into DMX on a Slash that does a big chunk, but thankfully under half, and Haxorus terrifyingly goes for a second Dragon Dance, but Brick Break finishes her off. That battle was tricky and messy, but we somehow pulled off a win with only one team member below half, so I'm proud of that. After getting the Master Ball, I can now go to Route 10, where thanks to my work so far, I'm guaranteed a Rufflet, one of my favorite bird Pokemon. I name him Jay-Z, my personal goat. I haven't talked too much about my battles with Chirin and Bianca, but at this point, since it's my last battle with Chirin, I might as well here, right? My hot take is that Bianca is generally the harder rival towards the end of the game, because Chirin is a bit easier to cover. For example, here, one Pokemon on my party perfectly matches up against his whole team, even though she's a bit underleveled. And thus, after Detect, Spinderella can Thunderbolt Unfezant, then Simipour. She does get outsped by Superior, who sets up Coil, and then she loses about 40% to Slam, but 2 Signal Beams finish him off, and then another gets rid of Liepard 2 for the win, letting me enter the lead. But before that, I have one final encounter to get. I can guarantee myself any of 3 different Pokemon here: Basculin, Durant, and Heatmore. But because of how good Steel Bug is, I'm pretty much always picking Durant in this situation unless I really need fire. I catch one and name her sister Solja, preventing me from ever catching a Basculin or Heatmore in this run. Now, Durant can have one of 3 abilities. One is decent, and the other 2 are pretty bad. I go and check Solja's ability, and not only does she have Swarm, but she also has an incredible Adamant nature. So does Jay-Z, for the record. Amazing. That said, this is my team for the league. If anyone faints, then one of them might come on. This is probably my favorite Elite Four of the quote-unquote golden era of Pokemon. I think they're all really memorable and interesting for the limited amount of time that you see them. And they can definitely pack a punch. Caitlin's up first. I lead Spinderella, who nails Reuniclus with a Signal Beam that keeps her alive in the red as Psychic brings Spinderella to the low yellow. Not good. At least I know I can take Reuniclus down with her though. And I get into a back and forth with Caitlin, using Signal Beams as she heals, until finally one more KOs. She brings Sigilyph in now, And this is the one Pokemon I think Spinderella can easily take on. So I go for Thunderbolt. And it KOs! Great job, Spinderella. Musharna is in now, so I go into DMX on a Shadow Ball. Worse than I thought it'd be, but still, he doesn't take that much damage. This means that he can freely crunch Musharna as she uses Charge Beam, getting the boost. While that would otherwise be terrifying, another Crunch gets the KO, leaving just Gothitelle. Crunch does over half, and because there's no way Thunderbolt could KO with a crit even, no paralysis means we're good to KO with another. First member down. Grimsley is next. I don't anticipate him being a big challenge, and I lead with Ja Rule. A superpower doesn't quite KO Scrafty, making me potentially reconsider my stance though. Scrafty just uses Sand Attack, so after Grimsley heals, I go for a Fire Punch. Finally, next turn, superpower lands again, this time critting. Could've used that last time, but it's fine. Anyways, now that Crocodile is in, I think my little Fire Ape, I guess, has seen enough, so I swap into Cardi on a hard crunch. But no worries, as Sleep Powder connects. A Giga Drain then gets rid of Crocodile and recovers most of Cardi's health. This brings in Bisharp, but this turn, Sleep Powder misses, meaning Cardi gets hit with a full dose of X-Scissor. She survives thankfully, and next turn, Sleep Powder connects. This gives me the confidence to swap into DMX, as Bisharp wakes up and lands a huge X-Scissor. And then an Aerial Ace. DMX is down to a quarter, but holds steady to Brick Break Bisharp down. But I have to switch now. I go into Spinderella on his Liepard, who hits a weak Aerial Ace before a Signal Beam knocks her down for the win. A surprisingly tough fight. Thankfully, it's all over now, but I'm not exactly thrilled about what's to come. That's because we're on to Marshall. His team is always at least a little tricky, with great coverage options despite being exclusively fighting types. Thankfully though, I've brought Cardi B. Here, Sleep Powder misses as Throh goes for Bulldoze. At least the next one connects. After I use Leech Seed though, Throh wakes up and lands a Stone Edge. Thankfully, Cardi's still over half health, but I have to set Sleep Powder back up now, which I missed, letting Throh land another Bulldoze, but thankfully my next one connects. Now I set up 2 Quiver Dances. I want to go for more, but I'm afraid of Throh waking up and dropping my speed more. So I make the play to just take him out now with the Giga Drain. Mienshao is out next. Sleep Powder misses again, so he lands a Jump Kick to do over half. Can't be having that, so I put him to sleep next turn, and Giga Drain his health away. I probably should have gone for this in the first place because now Cardi's not at full health. At least she levels up though. Sock's in next, and a Sleep Powder connects, letting me set up Leech Seed to get around Sturdy. Next, I go for another Quiver Dance, but here I get kinda greedy. I go for a second, letting Sock wake up and nail Cardi with a Stone Edge to do almost half. I was trying to get some speed boost, but I definitely opened myself up to another attack. I miss Sleep Powder next turn, as Sock fortunately misses a Stone Edge. Finally, I realize I should just attack, and Giga Drain gets the drop on Sock, leaving just Conkeldurr. And I truly do not know what I was thinking here. Despite having +4 special attack, I go for Sleep Powder, which misses, meaning Conkeldurr clocks Cardi with a hard-hitting Hammer Arm to do over 2/3 of her health. Now that should be okay if I just attack, but I go for another Sleep Powder, which misses again, letting Conkeldurr take arguably the MVP of the run so far out for absolutely no reason. Rest well, Cardi, I'm so sorry. I bring in Young M.A., who hits Conkeldurr with a Scald that burns, making his Stone Edge do only a quarter. One more finally ends this nightmare battle. I'm glad we made it out okay, but I'm devastated to have lost arguably my most effective Pokemon this whole run. I'll be missing her the rest of this challenge to say the least. I got greedy with sleep tactics, and was punished here by having a horrendously unlucky battle for sleep, where every Pokemon got a Sleep Powder miss, woke up early, or both. That's definitely a lesson for the future, but I hope it doesn't affect me too much in the present. But no time to think about that, because last up is Chantal. She's maybe the hardest league member for me this time, because I've just got a lot of ghost weaknesses. Cardi would have helped with that, but she's gone now, so it's just my 5 living team members left. I lead with DMX. This was a decision I realized was bad almost instantly, as Crunch leaves Cuffagrigus in the red, and she responds with a Will-O-Wisp. This means that after Chantal heals, Crunch isn't even doing half. I swapped to who I should have led with in the first place, Ja Rule. He comes in on a Shadow Ball, but tanks it well. And unlike Scrafty, Darmanitan isn't hurt nearly as much in this fight by the Mummy ability, so Fire Punch KOs in a hit. Galore comes in now though, so I need to switch, going into young May. She takes an Earthquake less well than I'd like, but a single Surf takes Galore out cleanly. But now Jellicent is in, and that means I need to switch. I go into Spinderella, who gets hit with a Shadow Ball, but KOs with 2 Thunderbolts. After a Surf sends her to the red, that is. This just leaves Chandelure, and I just do not match up well here. As a result, my best play is to either Sucker Punch or Thunderbolt with Spinderella, sacking her for a clean switch in. But she's become one of my favorite party members, and I just don't want her to go. So I swap into Biggie, who promptly gets taken below half with a Fire Blast. But no worries, as an Earthquake, she outspeeds? That's bad! I bring Young May in, but Chandelure outspeeds her too, and KOs with Shadow Ball. That means it's time. I send out Spinderella. I go for Sucker Punch, which does half, but Shadow Ball lands, erasing my sweet spider from this plane of existence. I need DMX to outspeed, but Chandelure beats him to the punch, meaning all I have left is Ja Rule. I've effectively lost here. Chandelure with Flash Fire is immune to all of Ja's attacks, leaving me shocked as Chandelure slowly whittles away his HP to cause my first wipe in the league since my 3rd video. I'm stunned. This run was a blast for me, but all that to just end up losing to Chantal is wild. I want to be clear that this was an extremely beatable fight, even without Lilligant, but I just played it so poorly. I should have led with Darmanitan and been more comfortable sacking Galvantula in a situation where everyone was healthy to allow for an easier win. I also shouldn't have underestimated Chandelure like that. For one of my favorite Pokemon, I didn't fully realize how fast they were. I also should have probably given Darmanitan a rock move or something for better coverage. But that said, this is kinda a fitting end to my experience with the original Unova games. The first time I played them, I couldn't even make it past Twist Mountain. All in all, despite the weirdness of the rival battles and their arcs, I love these games, and I love how many interesting and weird Pokemon Gen 5 brought in, even though I think most of them didn't quite work. But if you like Unova, you'll be excited to know that the second half of this 2-parter within my Banning Half the Pokédex series is going to be in Black 2 next time. But that's a wrap. If you liked this video, please feel free to like and subscribe to my channel. If you have any suggestions or things you'd like to see me do, leave a comment at me on Twitter or email me with your suggestions at ed40plays@gmail.com. Catch you all next time!